We all know the dream, right? Buying a beautiful, charming property in northern Portugal. The landscapes, the architecture, it's absolutely incredible. But, well, if you've actually spent a winter in an unrenovated or even poorly renovated Portuguese home, you know the harsh reality. You're usually dealing with a house that honestly feels colder inside than it does outside, it smells damp, and you are constantly battling mold. In this explainer, we're diving into the real structural reasons behind these massive household headaches. And more importantly, we're going to break down the proven solutions, like proper HRV systems, that can actually transform that damp reality into lasting comfort.
Okay, let's dive into this. We'll kick things off with the damp reality, then diagnose the symptoms of bad renovations, unpack why surface fixes fail, introduce the HRV ventilation solution, and wrap up with building for lasting comfort.
Section 1. The damp reality. Heating losses versus heating homes.
So here is a super common scenario. It's winter, you're freezing, so you crank up those electric plug-in heaters. Your energy bills absolutely skyrocket, but the house, it still feels like an icebox. Why is buying more heaters such a totally flawed strategy? Because in an unoptimized home, you aren't actually heating the house. You are literally just heating your losses. Think about it. Up to 20 to 40% of your heat vanishes straight out of poorly installed or old windows. Gone. Another 20 to 30% escapes right through the roof. The rest is just leaking out of uninsulated walls and random drafts. You simply can't out-heat these kinds of structural deficits. You've got to stop the bleeding first.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part, Section 2, Symptoms of Bad Renovations, or what we like to call the false cures. Often, people do try to fix their homes, but they end up treating the symptoms rather than the disease. Imagine this. You just poured money into a renovation, and then you're hit with this incredibly frustrating realization. Wait, we just renovated. We spent all this money. So why did the mold return after just 3 to 6 months? The paint starts staining again. That unmistakable damp smell comes creeping back. It's just maddening. The short answer is the brutal truth. You paid for surface fix, not a real cure. The typical, entirely flawed approach is just slapping fresh paint over damp plaster and keeping the windows clamped shut all winter, which just traps all that moisture right back inside. A real fix? That means acting like a detective. You have to find the actual source of the moisture. Is it coming through the facade, the roof? Is it rising up from the ground? And you absolutely have to correct the insulation details to eliminate those cold thermal bridges where the condensation is actually forming. Let's look at another classic symptom. Say you go out and spend a small fortune replacing all the windows in your property. But shortly after, the window reveals, the edges around the frame inside, swell up like a balloon and the paint starts peeling off in sheets. How is that even possible with brand new windows? Well, this boils down to an incredibly common mistake in Portugal: improper installation. The standard practice is often just wedging the new window in and blasting it with expanding foam. No sealing tapes, no vapor controls. What happens then? The humid indoor air hits that cold, poorly sealed edge around the frame, it condensates, and that water soaks straight into your plaster reveals, causing all that swelling and peeling. Proper installation demands external waterproof tape to keep the weather out and an internal vapor barrier tape to keep indoor moisture away from the cold frame. It is absolutely a game of proper barriers, not just foam. Section 3. Why surface fixes fail and the invisible enemies causing the damage. We've covered walls and windows, but now we need to look way up to the top of the house. Consider this totally surprising scenario. We replaced our roof tiles, but now the house smells damp, and our beautiful wooden parquet floors down in the living space are swelling up. Why on earth would a brand new roof cause water damage on your floors? So the crucial point here is that simply putting new tiles on your house does not equal a dry house. The flawed method is swapping old tiles for new ones without leaving a ventilation cap. It basically turns your roof into a giant greenhouse. Moisture gets trapped underneath the new roof, the air becomes highly humid, and because it has literally nowhere to vent out, it pushes down into your living space and wrecks those beautiful new floors. The wood absorbs it like a sponge. The correct, breathable method involves creating a 4 to 6 centimeter gap for continuous airflow from the eaves all the way up to the ridge. Airflow is absolutely everything. Moving right along to Section 4, the HRV ventilation solution, prescribing the cure. The real lasting answer to all of this is HRV, or MVHR, heat recovery ventilation. The data points to this as the absolute superhero of home comfort. It's a controlled ventilation system that consistently pulls that stale, highly humid air out of your home. But here is the genius part. Instead of just throwing your expensive heating out the window, it passes that air through a heat exchanger. It recovers the heat from the outgoing air and uses it to warm up the crisp, fresh air it brings in from outside. It literally allows your house to breathe continuously, removing moisture without losing your heating.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast. Before doing a proper renovation with correct insulation and an HRV system, you're essentially living in a sick building. Cold rooms, sky-high electric bills, and literally having to repaint over mold every single year. But after proper insulation, airtight windows, and installing HRV, the transformation is incredible. You get perfectly stable temperatures, massively lower energy use, and absolutely no molds. It actually fixes the root cause.
Section 5. Building for lasting comfort. The expert process. Now, understanding the science is great, but executing it, especially as an international client who might be totally unfamiliar with local Portuguese standards and language, can be incredibly stressful. To avoid those pitfalls we just talked about, you need a rigorous, structured expert process. Step 1. Initial contact to define the scope. Step 2. A technical call to deeply review what you actually need before anyone even steps foot on the property. Step 3. An on-site assessment to evaluate the true technical conditions, hunting down those thermal bridges and moisture sources. Step 4. A detailed preliminary quote covering the works and materials. And finally, Step 5. Approval and execution within an agreed timeframe. It's all about replacing guesswork with a true engineered approach. And when you follow that process, this is the result. Just listen to this quote from a real client, João Gomes, after getting his roof and HVAC properly renovated. He says, "A casa nunca esteve tão confortável e eficiente em termos energéticos," which means the house has never been so comfortable and energy efficient. That is the ultimate goal here, right? Transforming a property from a constant source of stress and dampness into a genuinely comfortable, efficient sanctuary. And the team executing this exact level of rigorous work? Portugal renovation experts. Their entire mission is bridging that specific gap for international clients in northern Portugal. They handle the complex roofing, the proper airtight window installations with all the right tapes, the thermal bridge corrections, and of course those vital HVRV systems, delivering projects clearly and without the usual stress. So, I will leave you with this final thought to ponder today. If you own a property or are planning to buy one in northern Portugal, are you going to be the person trapped in an endless cycle of buying electric heaters and repainting over mold every spring? Or are you ready to finally address those thermal bridges, install proper ventilation, and fix the actual root cause of your damp home once and for all? The science is clear, the solutions exist, the choice of how you renovate is entirely up to you. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and here's to a dry, comfortable home.